Excuse me, so I got my cough. So what happens? General Sam Houston in the Battle of Jacinto. This is basically near present day Houston. You remember Yosemite Sam? What, the name of Sam Houston? Yeah, I can't remember that. Anyways, um, basically the Mexican army was defeated and took Santa Anna prisoner. Under pressure, he signed the treaty giving up Mexico. Giving Texas up. And so these settlers taking land. This is a different time period, right? Then taking Texas tells the U.S. government, by the way, we want to actually become a state, and this was happening at the time of Andrew Jackson. Now, he realized, you remember, he's a slave owner too, but he wanted to preserve the Union. You remember that in the documentary, that there was some tensions taking place where one state wanted to secede, and he said this union must be preserved, and he gave a threat that he believed that it really needed to stay preserved. And he knew that the slave issue was going to create some tensions. So he didn't want to have to bear the responsibility of dealing with the controversies that would ensue over creating a new state. And then it was a marginalized issue under Van Buren. Oops, let me go back here. Okay. And so, and then we had President Tyler persuaded Texas to apply for statehood again in 1844, and it was rejected by Northern senators. Northern senators, why? Okay, some of the issues that we're talking about. Okay, so things are going to become more active in the war with Mexico once we get to President Polk. So he was elected as a Democrat in 1845, okay, and Congress approved of annexation just before he took office. So there was it already was understood that Texas was going to be a part of the United States. Polk failed to get Mexico to sell its territories, and all the evidence seems to show that he, in fact, was preparing for war with Mexico. And he ordered the army to the Rio Grande. And he basically makes a standoff with Mexico. We'll see this more in the documentary. And the Mexicans were not wanting to fight. It's one of those things where he was basically trying to create an excuse to get Mexicans to be provoked in order to justify what he's going to do. It's kind of like, you have a couple and one person wants to break up, but they don't want to be the one responsible for doing it. And so they kind of try to do things to get their other partner to cheat or do something bad, a transgressive relationship, so that then they can blame them when they were kind of setting them up. Okay. Some people will relate to that story, and others will be like, huh? If you don't get it, good for you. You've had much more healthy relationships than some of us. The bottom line is, it's provocative. It was provocative, and it was intended to get Mexico to do the wrong thing so we could do the wrong thing and look right about it. That's how some would argue it, okay? So some Mexican troops attacked a unit of American soldiers, and again, we're going to go over all this again more in the documentary. And basically, 1846, Congress declares war, 40 in the Senate to 2, and 174 to 14 in the House. And many Americans were in support of. Once they heard of our own troops getting shot, which is some argue what Polk was wanting, Americans felt provoked and mad at the Mexicans. You'll read some interesting aspects of this in Zen's book too, by the way. So we're going to actually go over that more. So we're going to move on a little bit on some other things going on under Polk, because we are going to talk about, you are going to get a full breakdown of the Mexican-American War. Oregon Territory. Look at this map here, okay? So again, this was Mexican territory here. There's the Oregon Trail. See, here's the Mormon Trek, kind of getting a visual. See, Nuevo, remember here? So this is kind of a good map to kind of get us a picture of where we've been at. Okay, and here's Oregon country, which included Oregon, Washington, Idaho, parts of Montana, Wyoming, and half of British Columbia. This was actually jointly occupied, that's very complicated, right, by Britain and the United States. We were both having claims to this together as a joint occupation since 1818. It was mainly just fur traders, use of natives for menial labor, also attempting to convert Native Americans to being Christians. And by the 1840s, there were more American settlers on the ground than there were British, kind of in the way that Mexico was dealing with. And so that gave basically the United States the ability to kind of push more to us getting that territory as opposed to Canada, okay? And there were many who were saying, look, we're going to have to go to war if we don't get what we deserve with the British again. And there was a shout, 54 or fight. 54 or fight was meaning that on the 54 parallel, we get that or we go to war, okay? So we had hawks that were really encouraging that. You could argue that Americans at this time, with that belief of manifest destiny, here we saw getting all of a consolidation of the United States on this part of the continent. We would have to do a battle or negotiations with Mexico and Britain. And many people in the United States were ready to do both, okay? But in the case of the Oregon territories, in June 15, 1864, a treaty fixed the borders between Canada and the U.S. on the 49th parallel, okay? And so that then solidified the United States getting that without a war, okay? Now, what about California and the rest of the Southwest? In the summer of 1846, while invading Mexico, Polk ordered offensive against New Mexico and California. This was all Mexican territory. This was a country of Mexico. Colonel Stephen Kearny made the long march to Santa Fe and occupied it. And that's that. Santa Fe is ours. He joined American settlers and led by John C. Fremont. Fremont Elementary School, Fremont. There's a lot of Fremonts, right? Cities. And the U.S. Navy in California, and had the Bear Flag Revolution, hence the bear, right, as a symbol of the United States, of California, sorry. And by the autumn of 1846, we conquered California and took it away from Mexico. So these states are all basically ripped out of the hands of Mexico through an act of war and expansion by the United States not that long ago. Think about how recent these conquests were. And it took time before they officially became integrated into the United States as well. And basically, if you live in California or in what is now the Oregon territories, you are living in where the United States was consolidated, and that was the finale of bringing this continent reined in into this from the East Coast to the West, okay, the final frontier, so to speak. In case of Hawaii, we'll expand some more territories later, but that's we have Alaska and so forth. But like on this continent, in this area, yeah. So, the end of the war, Polk sent Nicholas Trist, the U.S. presidential envoy to Mexico, in 1848, the Treaty of Hidalgo. Mexico ceded California and New Mexico to the U.S. and established the Rio Grande as the boundary of Texas. And Mexico was paid $15 million. For all that they lost, they didn't get anything. That was kind of almost a mockery to Mexico. Again, we're going to watch all of this in the documentary. But here's what's interesting, and I believe it's talked about in there, but what happens in 1849? Why do we have a football team called the 49ers? In 1849, gold is discovered in California. Can you imagine had Mexico discovered the gold in the middle of the war or just before the war? You think they would have fought harder to keep the territory? You think there would have been some European allies that come on the side of Mexico and to kind of get some treaty rights and come in and secure a different set of circumstances for a different set of outcomes? I think this is also why it's easy to see how Americans really thought that they had God on their side in the sense of victory. Not only do we just totally manhandle and just take all this land away from Mexico with relative ease, actually. Relative. Mexicans fought hard. You'll see. We didn't just do a cakewalk. But we got a lot of territory. Polk had large spoils of war. Okay? And then, a year later, gold's discovered in this territory? Are you kidding me? Oh my gosh. Talk about luck. Okay? And so that's what happened. But then we go back to this issue. What about slavery? And by the way, in Oregon, which I'm not, just to quickly say, it was the one state that gets integrated in the United States. It's not a slave state, but has black laws, which actually were up until recently. Blacks were not allowed to stay in Oregon for longer than 6 months, I think, or they'd get publicly beaten. So again, the racism in the United States and all the new territories was rampant, but the slavery was selective, as I keep reminding us in different parts. And so now what you're going to do is you're going to take the readings. We're going to go over and watch the documentary. We're going to have some discussions on this. And again, as we do the discussions, most of them have been very productive, but I also want to remind you that it's a sensitive topic. Right now, the issue of immigration. And so, you can have whatever politics you want, as you know, but keep it respectful, okay? To be blunt, don't talk like Donald Trump, okay? You can have his views, I guess. I just don't want to hear you talk to each other as students like that, okay? That's all. We'll move forward, and if there's any questions, of course, just hit me up and we'll go over anything that we need to.